we're connected up. We're done. Okay, right. Welcome to the meeting of the Chorley Borough Council's full council. Thank you everyone for attending this hybrid meeting for the council on Tuesday the 17th of November 2020. We have some members present in the Lancastrian, some joining from home, and members of the public are welcome to observe from Committee Room 1, where the meeting is being streamed. For those of you who do not know me, my name is Councillor Steve Holgate and I am the Mayor of Chorley. Councillor Julia Berry is the Deputy Mayor. She's normally sat behind me, but I think she's calling in from home this evening. Please note that this is a Teams meeting. It is being recorded and the video stream will also be uploaded to YouTube after the meeting. For each item, I will invite members to use the raise hand function on your iPad to make any comments to ensure each member has the opportunity to speak and that they are not speaking over each other. When speaking, please refer to the paragraph number to enable everyone to follow you, and please mute your microphone and video feed when you are not speaking. If for any reason the technology fails, then I will adjourn the meeting for a few moments or a few minutes to try and resolve the issue. Or if that is not possible, a new date and time for the meeting will be organised. Please can I now ask all members to confirm that they can hear and speak before the meeting begins, and I will call out each member's name. If you can then respond, please. Councillor Julia Berry. She's not on the call. Right, okay. Councillor Aaron Beaver.
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Martin Boardman.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Good evening.
Good evening. Councillor Alistair Bradley.
Here, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Terry Brown.
Here, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Valerie Combs.
I think she's still muted.
Valerie, can you unmute if you are muted, please?
I've seen her about somewhere.
Right, I'll go back to her at the end. I'll just make a note. Councillor Mark Clifford.
Present, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Jean Cronshaw. I know Jean's here, I've seen her. Right, we'll move on. Councillor John Dalton.
Present, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Graham Dunn.
Present, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Christopher France.
Present, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Gordon France. Okay, Councillor Margaret France.
Present, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Peter Gabbett.
Present, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Anthony G.
Present, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Danny G.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Tommy Gray.
Here, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Yvonne Hargreaves.
Present, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Alex Sutton.
Present, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Keith Hidden.
Present, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Hasina Khan.
Present, Mr. Mayor.
Zara Khan.
Oh, present, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Zara Khan, I should have said. Councillor Margaret Lees.
Present, Mr. Mayor.
And Councillor Roy Lees.
Present, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Laura Lennox.
Present, Mr. Mayor.
And Councillor Sheila Long.
Present, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Adrian Lowe.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor.
Good evening, Adrian. Councillor Marion Lowe.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor.
Good evening. Councillor Matthew Lynch.
Hello.
Hello. Oh, it tickles me, this. It really does. Councillor June Molyneux.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor.
Good evening, Councillor Molyneux. Councillor Alistair Morwood.
Present, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Steve Murphy. Not on call. Okay. Councillor Beverly Murray.
Yes.
Councillor Deborah Platt.
Present, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Gillian Sharples.
Present, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Paul Sloan. Councillor Sloan.
Present, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Joyce Snape.
Present, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Kim Snape.
Present, Mr. Mayor.
Right. Councillor John Walker.
Yeah, present, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Paul Walmsley.
Present, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Neville Whittam.
Present, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Alan Whittaker.
Present, Mr. Mayor.
And Councillor Peter Wilson.
Present, Mr. Mayor.
Right. I'll go back to Councillor Valerie Collins. Okay, moving on.
Present.
You are. Thank you. Thank you.
Yes.
Councillor Jane Cronshaw. And Councillor Steve Murphy. No. Okay. Right. I'd appreciate if you'd stop making me laugh so much at this very auspicious occasion. Right. We've moved on to apologies for absence. Have we got anything written down?
None received, Chair.
So there's no apologies received. Does anyone want to submit apologies on behalf of anyone who isn't present from this room? No. Okay, moving on then. Sorry.
Could I just interrupt? Sorry.
Councillor Berry, yeah.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor. Present, Mr. Mayor.
Right.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Right. I thought you must be somewhere. So well done. Okay. Thank you. So we've got apologies for absence, right? They're done. Item 1, the minutes of the meeting held on Tuesday, the 29th of September 2020 of the council, and they are in your agenda pack, pages 5 to 10, to be proposed by Councillor Bradley, seconded by Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can I suggest that those minutes of that meeting of the 29th of September, as contained in the agenda pack, are taken as a true and correct record? Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Wilson?
Seconded, Mr. Mayor.
Right, okay. Are there any issues to raise on the accuracy of these minutes from any member? Please use your raised hand function if you wish to speak on this. And I will look to Ruth, who says nobody's raised their hand. So we'll take that as agreed. Item 2 is declarations of any interest, pecuniary or non-pecuniary. Does anyone have any of those? I hear nothing, so we'll take that as no. Mayoral announcements. That's me. Right. I've got some comments to make about Remembrance Sunday and then about the situation in Chorley in general. It was an honour for me to take part in the pre-recorded service of Remembrance that was shared online on Remembrance Sunday. Despite the restrictions, it was vitally important that we continue to pay tribute to all those who have sacrificed their lives serving our nation. The online service provided a way for people to remember from the safety of their homes as they've been viewed 5,000 times on the council's Facebook page. Special thanks must go to St. Lawrence's Church, who filmed and edited the footage. If you haven't yet had chance to watch the service, I would urge you to do so. It is a fitting and moving tribute to our fallen heroes. With regards to my general comments, I think we will all agree that these are strange and demanding times. And I would like to say that up until quite recently, I've been going around safely talking to lots of different people, including businesses, traders, faith organisations, voluntary organisations. And I must say that the sense of community is so strong. I could feel it coming from everybody, the resolve and the compliance and the due diligence in carrying on with life as safely as is possible, but carrying on nonetheless. And it is a time to be kind and considerate and compassionate to each other, and to show our true worth as civic leaders. But also, I must say that the amount of support and general empathy coming from the citizens that we represent is absolutely awe-inspiring. And I, as a first citizen at this moment in time, am absolutely proud to represent such a brilliant community. And I thank you all for that. And I think it shouldn't go unsaid that everybody is playing a really strong part in making sure that we get through this, and we will get through it. And I am optimistic on your behalf. So those are my comments. Thank you. Move on to item 4, which is public questions. I've not received any public questions requests.
No, Mr. Mayor, no members of the public have requested to speak, but I've just noticed that Councillor Tony G had raised his hand and wanted to make a comment, I think.
Oh, right, on the yes, okay, Councillor G. Who raised their hand? Sorry. Tony G. Councillor Tony G. You wish to speak? Tony, are you on mute?
I was on mute. Yes, we are, as you said, we are living in very difficult times. But personally, I've been very proud of what you've done over the last week or two. It's not been easy for you, but I've known you many years. The first time you came into the council chamber, you came in with a bucket of mud. And since then, those times, you developed into one of our great statesmen of the council. And I'm really proud of the way you've represented us over the last few weeks.
Thank you, Tony. You've made me blush now, so that doesn't happen very often. Thank you. Right, okay, that's appreciated, really is, thank you. Where are we up to? Item 5 is the Chorley Council's corporate strategy, and we're to receive and consider the report of the Deputy Chief Executive. This item is for a decision, and I would ask that Councillor Peter Wilson introduces and proposes this, and I believe Councillor Bradley wishes to speak and second it. Peter?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to, if I may, just echo what you said in relation to the COVID response from the community, and I think it's something that we as a council have had to adapt to. Obviously, it's impossible to mention the past 12 months in terms of our corporate strategy and the priorities of this council without saying that everything has been completely turned on its head by the COVID pandemic, as it has for everyone else as well. We're not unique in that, but at the same time we have to step up and you know, respond to the needs of the community. And I think before I go into this year's strategy, Mr. Mayor, and how we intend to respond to both the pandemic, but also in terms of sticking to our key themes and our key priorities, I do want to just mention the work that has been done. And the first thing we've always talked about at various corporate strategies and budgets, Mr. Mayor, is the need for this council to be resilient and to be flexible and to be able to adapt. That has been never proven to be the case as much as is since March of this year with COVID. And I'd just like to thank all our officers who have worked exceptionally hard in very, very difficult circumstances. We're all affected personally by lockdown. We're all impacted by that, but they've actually gone out there and delivered. And just to give you a flavour of that, Mr. Mayor, if I may, this council has taken over 2,000 calls from local residents. We've made over 2,000 calls, received over 1,500 calls. We've mailed out 3,300 items to people to make sure that vulnerable people are getting the support they need in their own homes. We've provided people with personal shopping, food, prescriptions, Over the summer, we've worked on the holiday hunger schemes to make sure that kids are getting food and that families are getting advice on debt, on energy costs, on employment. In the business team, there's a massive amount of work being done in making sure that grants that we've been asked to pay out have been paid out. In fact, I think we've paid out our grants before the government money actually landed in our bank account, because we recognise the need of businesses. We're in dire straits and are still in terrible situations. So I would just like to say thanks to people like Angela and people Mark and his team and the business team. I know that Councillor Bradley will probably mention more of that when he seconds the report, because everything has been turned upside down, Mr. Mayor. We do have a major issue in COVID, and our council can hold its head up high in the way that it's responded, and it's done that because of the people that we've got on the ground, making sure that our residents are looked after and cared for, and for that we should be very grateful. Even more so, Mr. Mayor, considering everything that I've just said, that we've actually continued to deliver on our key projects. So at last year's corporate strategy, we outlined a programme for the forthcoming 12 months for 1920. In that, a number of major schemes were in there, such as the employment land at Olka Lane, the works that were due to begin at Astley Hall, shared services. That's been a major body of work for this council, and that again not only hopefully saves money but improves resilience. We've started on that. We've started on the Westway project at Astley Village. We've done a number of improvements to play areas and open spaces, such as the Meadows, Great Knowley. We've refreshed the council website. That's just being launched. There's a number of projects that we had outlined last year, Mr. Mayor, that we have made great progress with, and up to the end of Q2, our key projects were 85% green rated, so that's 85% of them on track, which is excellent news, again, given the circumstances in which we're operating. So, as I say, that's been good progress. But this meeting tonight, Mr. Mayor, is very much about building on that programme. So it's about building on the success that the council has had. It's about recognising the needs of the local community and saying, what do we need to do to make sure that we still meet the needs of our residents, that we still provide value for money as a council, and that also we see those changes that we started last year through. And what members will recognise about this report tonight is that there are a number of schemes that we had in last year's that have been carried over. And that's mainly for two reasons, Mr. Mayor. The first is obvious, which is the COVID pandemic, of course, has caused some delays to certain schemes. But more to the point, actually, Mr. Mayor, is when we set out those projects last year, we did make it clear that these were going to be schemes that were delivered over 18 months and 2 years or more, so such as the Westway playing fields, such as the work at Astley Hall. So again, there'll be no surprise to see some of those projects in this year as we continue to make progress. And there's also then new projects in there as well. So if I can just run through those, Mr. Mayor, as briefly as possible. The vision and priorities for the council stay the same. So members will recall the 4 priorities. So the first priority, involving residents and improving their local area. We still believe this is a key priority. And in that, we are now developing the work at Astley. We had that just approved at the last cabinet meeting, that the work's going to be hopefully undertaken to remove the render. Work in the interior of the building as well to improve the visitor experience, open the shop. So again, that's an exciting package of works at Astley. We've got the shared digital strategy, which again will improve the efficiency of the council and actually deliver changes both across organisations at South Ribble and Chorley. And then quite crucial, Mr. Mayor, is the final scheme on that, which is the community resilience local action plans. Never before have we seen the need for local communities to be able to have that level of resilience and that ability to deliver on their needs as we have during the last 6 months. That's going to be essential as we move forward. Yes, we hear about vaccines. We hope they're successful and we get back to normal, but it's unrealistic to expect that to happen soon. And it's important we make sure that we do what we can to support local communities, again, during this period and beyond. The second priority, Mr. Mayor, is clean, safe and healthy communities. We've seen the project at Tatton get planning permission recently. That's a major scheme for the east of Chorley, where we're going to have a new doctor's surgery, new extra care facility, new community centre, new play facilities for young people. That's a major scheme in the east of Chorley, which has been seriously lacking for a number of years, Mr. Mayor. We're also looking to continue to improve play and community spaces, which I mentioned before. And then another key element, Mr. Mayor, is the homelessness and rough sleeping strategy. And again, I think this is really, really important in the current climate as people do struggle. It's important that we get drilled down to people's issues, whether it's mental health, family breakdown, all those things. And that affects people, rural or town centre, doesn't matter where. Everyone's equal in that. Everyone faces issues that they struggle with at home, and it's important we support them. The third priority, Mr. Mayor, is the strong local economy. Again, a consistent theme. I mentioned before the Olca Lane. We've made progress on Olca Lane, as we said. That's due to be delivered with a new employment site by the end of 2021. The town centre improvements. Town centre always requires work. We've seen significant improvements in our town centre, and that continues with work such as the improvements and across the road there for the proposed civic square with the demolition of the old bingo hall. And then finally, work at Bengal Street to again have a mixed development use there with small industrial units, some residential. So again, an exciting project for our town centre. And then the fourth, by no means last priority, Mr. Mayor, is that I'm being an ambitious council. There's more to meet the needs of our residents. And again, we've got a number of schemes under that. The first being to deliver the phase 2 of the shared services. I mentioned some of the benefits of shared services before. Phase 2 takes us further into shared agreements with South Ribble on areas such as ICT and customer services, very much the customer facing elements of our work, but nonetheless very important. To extend our street service improvements, again to review bin collections, waste bins and street cleaning, and again improve efficiency there. We've seen significant improvements already, but again we expect that to get better over the next 12 months. Working with our partners to deliver sustainable public services, Mr. Mayor, that's a crucial one, particularly in the world of health. We always see things changing in the health world. Remember at the last meeting, I think, Mr. Mayor, we had a notice of motion at the hospital A&E. Delighted that the A&E is now reopened, 8 till 5, with due to going back 8 till 8 once it's in the new year. Despite some concerns about safety and etc., the trust are confident that it is safe to operate that A&E. It is open for local residents, and we look forward to that getting better in the future. And finally, Mr. Mayor, an issue I know that's close to your heart and many other members, which is delivering the green agenda. And again, we have action plans there for measuring our air quality and obviously ultimately leading to improvements in air quality, to build on the tree planting scheme that we outlined in the budget earlier this year, and also to encourage green travel. And that applies to our employees as well as the wider community, to actually incentivise people to travel either with the use of electric vehicles or by using public transport. But again, that's a key priority for this council, and it underpins a lot of what we do across the board, not just as a project in itself. I mentioned, Mr. Mayor, COVID quite often in this summary of the corporate strategy, and if members just look at page 23, paragraph 38, you'll see a number of measures that have been introduced to measure specifically the recovery from COVID, because we can all talk about what's gone on, and obviously we still don't know exactly where we are in the future, but the one thing we do know is that we need to do as much as we can to help businesses, to help the community during these next few months, which are going to be really tough, but then more importantly, or just as important, through the rest of the year, through the rest of 2021, to make sure that as we hopefully the situation improves, we're at the forefront of building on that growth, hopefully, and on that improvements in terms of our daily lives, in terms of business opportunities, in terms of jobs, and so on. So those measures there are specifically there for that. Some of them are relatively common measures that we've used or similar measures we've used in the past. But I think that's really important, Mr. Mayor, because we've discussed as a council and as a group our response to COVID. But it's about making sure now that we have a plan to measure those improvements or find out what's still wrong and do something about it as well. So those measures are there specifically for that, and they will be reported at each quarter with the usual quarterly reports that we receive at Cabinet, Mr. Mayor. So all in all, Mr. Mayor, just to conclude, I would like to again reiterate my thanks to our officers during this time. Thank our officers for preparing this report, in particular Rebecca and Vicky and Chris. It's not been easy, and it's not been an easy year to drive forward on performance, but we have done it. We've done very well. I anticipate that we will adapt and improve as we go forward in 2021, and I look forward to reporting back on these measures, and I hope that this corporate strategy delivers on the priorities of this council and on the priorities of our residents. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Councillor Bradley, you're proposing to second this and speak?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you to Peter for proposing that in his usual comprehensive manner. And I think testament to Peter that he doesn't just review this report and help prepare this report in a comprehensive manner. He also does the same with the actual updates we get through the quarters of the year, as you would expect him to do nothing else. And I know that he holds officers to task about the delivery against our strategy. Because I think sometimes, Mr. Mayor, at this time of year, we look at this report. I'm all for coming to this meeting and trumpeting what we've done and trumpeting what we're going to do and all the rest of it. And Councillor Wilson does the same as well. But I think we are this year in a slightly different mood, a slightly different approach. It's not about being triumphal. It's about reflecting on what we have done and what we've not been able to do this year, and therefore what we're going to do and what we hope to be able to do and make up some of that ground in the coming year. We have been affected by COVID. We can't say we haven't. But I think what this pandemic, this crisis, this call it what you will, Mr. Mayor, has shown is that Chorley was in a good place to deal with it. Why was that, Mr. Mayor? It was because we prepared for it. We prepared by the last 8 years of this administration and its plan, its strategy, its preparation by, if you like, Mr. Mayor, mending the roof while the sun was shining. Now it's raining, and it's raining heavily. But Chorley isn't suffering to quite the extent that some other communities are for a number of reasons. And some of those are spelt out in this report, Mr. Mayor, and have been spelt out in the last reports over the last 8 years. It's about resilience, and we come back to those 4 key priorities about looking after residents, about helping them help themselves, about having a strong economy, and being a council that goes above and beyond and is ambitious for and on behalf of its residents. Because, Mr. Mayor, what that has allowed us to do is to have resilient communities, resilient community facilities. So we've invested in community centres, we've invested in community groups to help them grow and help them to have strength. We've invested in our retail sector and in our business sector in both the town centre, and I'm sure the opposition will raise the fact that we do it in the town centre, but also in the villages, because our villages have been more resilient than many others because they've been able to, because this council has helped them over the last 5 to 10 years. We've also worked year in, year out with partners, which we all know is difficult because when you work with partners, you have twice as much work and you make progress half as fast. But the importance of doing that, Mr. Mayor, is tested at times like this, when we've had to work with partners very closely, quickly and efficiently, and it's almost been seamless at times, so that residents haven't seen the impact that other areas have seen. We've prepared, and because we've prepared and done things properly, we haven't failed like some other areas have. And I look to the national government, and all I see there, Mr. Mayor, unfortunately, generally is failure to deliver what it say they're going to do, failure to get adequate testing, adequate tracing, and adequate thought ahead. This council can't be accused of that because we have done that. Peter mentions a lot of the schemes that we've done. He missed a number of schemes out, and I noted as he was talking the Whittle surgery, the important work there. Also in Whitley Woods and Clayton Woods, Carbrook, the work that's going on there at the moment, Mr. Mayor, on a very important local project. Some of the outreach work that we've worked with the youth on to deliver in the villages, and to do that IT inclusion work, again, usually in communities more far-flung because they're the areas that need it. And also, and a project that I was quite glad to see get off the ground was the belated wildlife corridor work that we did because it got cancelled in the first lockdown, and many of us saw the benefits of it just before the second lockdown. And in a way, the progress of our last year's plan has very much echoed the ups and downs of the last year in terms of COVID and its effect on our wider life. Therefore, Mr. Mayor, of course, I commend the detail in the strategy. I think it's a continuation of what we've done previously. I think it reinforces the good stuff we've done before that we've relied on over these last few months. And therefore, we're not going to stop it now. We're going to carry on in the future. I also particularly welcome the Green Agenda that's running through this proposal, because also, Mr. Mayor, we don't want to lose sight of the long-term future at the expense of the short-term future. We have some short-term problems to deal with. We have some short-term issues to get over. But we will do that because we're Chorley and we're good at it. What we also need to do is keep our eyes focused on the long term, which is more of the same. It's that green agenda, it's jobs, it's people's lives, and it's helping our community help themselves. Because every time we do that, they really show what Chorley can do. And your own comments at the start of this meeting echoed that, Mr. Mayor. So I appreciate that you've understood it, and I therefore help all other councillors also understand why we've done so much and made so much efforts over the last few years, because we're reaping the rewards of that at this unfortunate time. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Bradley. I now invite any member who wishes to make comment to please use the raise hand function on their iPad, and I will give them the floor. I look to Wendy to see if anyone's coming through with those raised hands. Councillor Walker. Councillor Walker, do you wish to comment at this time?
Yes. I think, yes, I'd rather comment now than wait until after I presented our alternative.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to start by agreeing with what Councillor Wilson said about the officers of the council who have worked tirelessly during the COVID-19 pandemic in very difficult circumstances, and they should be commended for their efforts. As to the corporate policy, it is nothing strange or new in this policy. It follows on from last year. The projects that are being dealt with at the moment, they are behind schedule, but we understand why that is, because of the COVID-19. But there's not a great deal in this that we haven't seen before. There's nothing really new. And I find there are three omissions in this policy, which I'd like to ask Councillor Wilson and Councillor Bradley to give their opinion why I'm asking about this. Firstly, there's nothing mentioned in this policy about housing, which is a very, very big problem at the moment for all residents of Chorley, because there are lots of applications gone in, lots of applications been approved, and this works against the residents of the town, because it then affects the school admissions, and that is another thing that hasn't been addressed in this policy. We do know the primary schools are all full, secondary schools are all full, and we are still building houses. And there's just been a projection over the last fortnight, we've heard that in 5 years' time, there'll be 600 or 700 families who will not be able to get their children into the schools that they require. And it is time we started putting pressure on the LA, or started thinking of building a new secondary school for ourselves. I would like that some comments have been made about that. I'm pleased with I think there's 4 new projects that haven't really been discussed before. And Councillor Bradley did mention the Carbrook one. I was round there this afternoon in walking my dog, and that is a splendid new venture. It isn't financed by the council, but it's been very well received by people who I see when I'm out walking. And they tell me that the project is nearly finished, which is to be commended. So those are the things that I want to mention at this stage. I might come back on some of the things later on. But if Councillor Wilson or Councillor Bradley would like to give their thoughts on what the housing problem, the schools problem, and there is another one as well, is the needs. That is not mentioned in your corporate policy. We do know that school leavers at 16, 17 are finding difficulty getting jobs. I appreciate that, and of course at the moment when a lot of companies aren't working or have been stood down, it will be very difficult to find jobs. But we should be making efforts in the very near future to get the young people back in employment. Thank you.
Okay. Who wishes to respond to that? Councillor Wilson.
Sorry, just unmuting, Chair. Just to go through each point, if I may, Chair. Councillor Walker, mentioned housing, and I think there's two separate issues here. I think there's the need to address affordable housing in the area, and the shortage of that. We do have a housing strategy which was in the corporate strategy last year. We said we'd implement the strategy. We have done, and we've seen a number of units coming online, including the extra care facility, which is housing. Don't forget, that's accommodating a number of people, albeit specialist housing. We do have a target, and we're looking to make sure we hit our target of affordable housing. In terms of the housing, unwanted housing development, or unnecessary housing development, for want of a better phrase, I don't disagree with Councillor Walker or anyone who expresses concern about our housing numbers. In fact, I think the whole council is unanimous in terms of the alarm of which we see from government policy, which tells us that the methodology we have to use in our local plan means that we'd have to be building 500, 600, 700 houses a year. I totally agree. If I could come up with a strategy to remove this government and stop this housing plan, it'd be in this corporate strategy, Councillor Walker. But unfortunately, it's not within my gift nor with anyone on this council. So while I agree with your sentiments, I don't see what scheme or what key project we could introduce, apart from that we all campaign for the removal of a government that's hell bent on concrete in all our green spaces. Other than that, I can't think of a scheme. If you can and you can suggest it, we'll go for it. In terms of the schools admissions, again, that is an issue. It is an issue that probably Councillor Bradley will know a little bit more than I, and I'm sure he wants to add his comments to that. But I know it's something we have liaised with the county council on in the past, and again, I don't disagree about the school need in the future. If it was within our gift, I'm sure we would be already doing something about it, but unfortunately it relies on partners more than it does us. Councillor Borden shaking his head. I don't think again, if he can tell me that we can suddenly build a school and find me the piece of land, that'll be useful. In terms of the final point on NEETs, Councillor Walker, I do think we did have a measure for that in the report. I'll come back to you on that one if not. I still think we've still got measured. Appendix B, corporate strategy measures, page 31, a strong local economy, the percentage of 16 to 17-year-olds that are not in education, employment, training. It is still there, Councillor Walker.
Mr. Mayor, can I just come back on that?
Well, let Councillor Bradley do his bit, and then
okay.
Okay, Councillor Walker, you go ahead on that, and we'll take the next item separately.
Well, yeah. Just coming back on the housing, I tend to think that we don't do enough to make sure that we've got enough affordable houses. We haven't got enough bungalows. I think we built in the last 6 years only 21 bungalows, and with an ageing population, including myself, we do need these smaller type houses for starter families and young families. And we should be making better use of the local plan. Now, I know the local plan is to come forward this next year, hopefully, and no doubt it will be debated at council in the very near future. But I would hope that the officers would try and get into the local plan, that prospective developers do build more affordable houses and more bungalows in their future areas of planning. I mean, Whittle, there's just been a talk of 250 houses in a safeguarded area of Whittle. Now, it would be very great if you could say to them, if it does come to planning, that they should build out of 250 houses, 50 affordable houses, 50 bungalows, and then 150 houses, 3-4 bedroom houses, which they always built in Red Row anyway. But that is my thought on the housing future policies. Thank you.
Councillor Bradley.
Just to respond to Councillor Walker's points, and to echo on what Councillor Wilson said, the fundamental problem we've got is that we can't put strategy in place for our housing. We have a strategy in place. We had an agreement with our neighbours to share housing numbers, which the government appointed inspector drove a coach and horses through on Pear Tree Lane at a time when people couldn't even attend the meeting, and the meeting effectively held in secret, in my view, deplorably. When we complained about it, we got a letter from the minister, Mr. Jenrick, on the day the announcement was made of what the result of the inquiry was, to say why we couldn't postpone it. That is not democracy in action. So for Councillor Walker to raise this as an issue this council can do anything about, apart from basically start to disengage with the government around planning and to start to actively, you know, as Councillor Wilson said, have a totally different government policy. I don't know what we can do. But what I may be doing is coming to Councillor Walker and his group shortly to suggest what shortly can do, which might be taking some very strong lines against what the government are A, currently doing, and B, are proposing to do. But it seems actually we're not that much out of step with other conservatives and particularly conservative councils, because as we saw from the newspapers at the weekend, the government are already rowing back from the proposals to change the rules from what's already a bad system and to make it into a completely unworkable system, which would yet further disadvantage Chorley. So I will welcome the opposition here's support in doing that in due course. And Councillor Walker was actually saying some of the things that I personally believe are the part of the problems as well. In terms of school numbers, just in his second point, Councillor Boardman was at a meeting last week, as were other councillors of the joint working group with Preston and South Ribble, where we were given a report from County Council that appeared to say that primary school places are less of a problem in the next few years, but secondary school problems, because there was a glut, if you like, of primary school kids going through at the minute, which is making the pressures in primary schools at the moment, that pressure will move in future years as the birth rate is dropping slightly into secondary schooling. And we were effectively 400, I think, Councillor Boardman will correct me if I'm wrong, 400 secondary school places short across the borough. That's not quite enough to get a new school. 600 is a number for a new school. But what I think we would see once we transpose that to a Chorley footprint, and bear in mind we were being shown the whole of central Lancashire last week, was the point that if you actually want where people wish to go to school and wish to go to school close to where they live, which is the point Councillor Boardman made in the meeting, was that 400 is about the need for a new secondary school. The question then is who's going to pay for that? And this comes back to another fundamental point that Councillor Walker refers to as part of housing, is the developers should put the money in up front for school places. They should put the money in up front for dentists and for doctors and for all the other infrastructure, as opposed to how it currently is that they pay for it afterwards. And we all know that in reality they don't pay enough. So Councillor Walker, what we want to see in Chorley is the developers paying up front, because otherwise they won't do it. And if we can affect that, we will do. But unfortunately, for all we might think at times we're an island, we're not. We're bound by national laws. And the risk, as we saw at Pear Tree Lane, was that national laws steamroller over us. So I share your concerns. We don't have the answers here in Chorley, but trust me, we are looking into everything that is currently going on across the country to start to resist some of the 800 plus houses that we've already had presented to us since that Pear Tree Lane decision was made. And you name check Redrow in there, and they are one of the biggest offenders. You might think they're a good developer, but they've presented most of those 800 houses recently. So trust me, they're on my naughty list for Christmas at the minute, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Are you happy with those responses?
Yes. I won't make any comment about Red Row.
No, well, you've got your own report to present yet, so I'm sure you've got a few bullets there. Right, I've got 4 other people who have indicated to speak, unless I'm corrected on that. I've got Councillor Gabbard, Councillor Tony G, Councillor Graham Dunn, and Councillor Boardman. I will take them in that order. That's the order I spotted your hands going up. So, Councillor Gabbard.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor. I think you might be a bit wrong there. I've not put my hand up.
Oh, have you not? All right. Well, we'll go on to Councillor G then. Tony G.
I'm the same. I don't think I put my hand up.
Oh, there's somebody. Well, never mind. It shortens the meeting, doesn't it? Councillor Graham Dunn, did you put your hand up? Please say you did.
I did.
Wait.
A lot of the things which have been which were raised by Councillor Walker have been answered or responded to by the leader and deputy leader. And I have to say, I mean, I don't disagree with his concerns about shortages of school places, shortages of the right sort of houses. But I would like to emphasise these are very much matters that he and his colleagues need to raise with the central government that is run by their party. The responsibility for developing new schools, I mean, we talked to the county council about it, but the responsibility for these new schools rests with actually the government, because local authorities are not empowered to build new schools at the moment. There's a presumption there'll be an academy when they're raised. So we're rather peripheral to it. It would be much easier if local authorities were able to start building schools that they run again. The government's policy is merely an obstruction to efficient action. And furthermore, the financial state of the county council, in the circumstances made quite clear by Councillor Bradley, militates very much against getting these buildings put up in a timely fashion. So that the whole system is wrong. It needs to return to local councils getting money up front and being able to develop schools, and they would happen in a timely fashion. The issue about housing is, of course, part of the problem is that developers bring forward plans which include certain amounts of social housing, and then they spend much of their time trying to say that they can't afford to build the social housing part, and the government's current policy will make that particular situation worse. So we do not have the developers on our side. We are constantly chasing them around, trying to get them to behave in an effective and a proper manner, and to pay those things which they need to pay to allow the infrastructure to be put in place. And we're being obstructed, and the size of developments which have to have certain amounts of social housing is planned to be increased very significantly, so that 90-odd% of developments won't need to have any social housing in them at all. Now, I realise that it'll be more than 5% of the houses built, because bigger sites they may only be 5%, but they may be 50% of the houses built. But it's still an awful lot of developments that do not have to have any social housing in them. And also, developers are quite particular about what sort of houses they want to build. If we could build houses, we could build bungalows and we could build flats in town centres. But again, this council is in the position of being sort of armchair critics to the irresponsible behaviour of others, which we're unable to control. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Boardman, am I correct in suggesting that you may wish to speak?
I have my hand up, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much.
Go ahead.
Only briefly. It's just to come back on a couple of points made in the corporate policy, really, and a couple of comments that have been made to date. I do have to commend the council and the officers. I think they've done an absolutely sterling job over the past 6 to 8 months from March in not distributing, as Councillor Wilson said, their money. It's the government's money which has been distributed out to the businesses, and I don't think we need to forget that. Straight into Chorley and straight out of the pockets into the local businesses, which I'm wholly applaud the central government for doing so. I also support central government for the for the several other. Who's whispering? Oh, sorry, Mr. Mayor, it's you.
Sorry, it's me.
For the other benefits that government have brought, Councillor Bradley, I'm a bit disappointed with your comments when you said that the central government have failed over the past 8 months. Furlough scheme, not a failure. Business grants, not a failure. Money's going directly out to councils, no failure there. C-bill loans to businesses, bounce back loan to businesses, you name it, this government has given it. If you could give me a Labour government that's given anywhere near that kind of money out to businesses over the past, I'd say, 50 years, then please do so. So that's my little beef out of the way. I'll get back to your corporate policy. There's a paragraph in there, which is paragraph 33, which is the ambitious green agenda, which was being discussed. I think Councillor Bradley mentioned it runs through the corporate policy. I think we'll find it only actually mentions it in paragraph 33 think it is. I'm just looking at that. Yes, the Green Agenda, paragraph 33. And it mentions it again when it goes through the projects a bit further on down. I just wonder if Councillor Bradley and Councillor Wilson can just let me know how this council really wants to and tries to deliver their carbon neutral strategy by 2030. With basically just 3 projects in there, and actually the projects there were there last year as well. So a bit of progress on that would be really useful for me on that one. I can't see it being delivered, but I'll wait and see what the answer is on that one. That's the first question. The other one is in relation to housing, and I know we've discussed this, and we discussed this a lot in council. Councillor Bradley will also back me up in saying that the reason that the figures for Chorley are so high is because of the formula that is being used to give us the new numbers of what we're supposed to deliver is based on the past delivery. Now, this council has consistently delivered over 30% more per year housings than they actually need to deliver. So we need to address that issue first before we start moving forward. So again, yes, the government has a hand in this, but Chorley Council also have an equal hand in delivery of residential properties and what type that is. I know we can point a lot of blame at the central government, but we do, and I'm going to say, me being a member of the council, need to accept that responsibility as well. I'm all for lobbying this government when this government will listen to us, not in these times of COVID. But I'd just like to also ask the question to Councillor Bradley and Wilson: how many times have your leaders listened to you guys when you've shouted up to Westminster? I don't remember Mr. Corbyn doing that. Perhaps he will now he's been reinstated back into the party as of this afternoon. So good luck going forward. Thank you.
Right, thank you. Who wishes to respond to that? Councillor Wilson.
I'll probably start, Mr. Mayor. No doubt Councillor Bradley will have his own comments as well. First of all, Councillor Boardman, I was once quite rightly reminded by your predecessor, Councillor Joyce, when I mentioned investing money. It's not the government's money or the council's money, it's the taxpayers' money. And the government has directed taxpayers' money, you are quite right, into areas that need to be invested in the furlough scheme. Those things are important. Those things have kept people in jobs. There's no question of that. My comment that I made in the report was the fact that we process those things quickly and efficiently. So there's no claim of a party political element of that. This whole thing, COVID thing, is beyond politics. We're all trying to fight it. I think Councillor Bradley's points about government and frustration there. We could go on about PPE in the first instance. We could go on about track and trace going out to private companies that aren't those well-known, experienced public health bodies such as Deloitte's. We could go on and on and on, but let's probably not get bogged down in that. At the end of the day, we all have our own views about what the government's done right and wrong in relation to COVID. Coming to the Green Agenda, Councillor Boardman, you'll recall at budget time that we put in £500,000 for a number of green initiatives, which was the first step. And as I did say at the budget time, that is the first step. So to answer your question about how does that become, do these 3 schemes that we've got here tonight make us carbon neutral by 2030? No. These are the first 3 schemes that we're looking to pursue, because one of the things we agreed, again, if you recall a discussion at budget, I can't remember who was, I think it was yourself, Councillor Boardman, but we discussed this air quality. We discussed the fact that we need an air quality service. You need to understand the level of the problem before you move forward. And that's one of the things that we're doing. We discussed the expansive tree planting programme of a tree for every resident. We've done further work in relation to the hedgerows and the electric vehicles issue, and encouraging green travel is just one of those. But more important than any of that, Councillor Boardman, what it doesn't say in the report is that we're actually employing an officer to deal with this full time, which I think is really important because that allows us to collate some of the work that we've already been doing and allows us to push forward on other schemes as well. One of the things we looked at was using our buildings and our assets. So, what about solar panels on buildings that we own? Well, again, I know it's an issue for the Conservatives, all the buildings we own, but perhaps we can put them to good use by putting more solar panels on them. There are many, many more things to be done, Councillor Boardman. So these first 3 are just that. It's a first step. It is not. It's the entirety of the project. In terms of it underpinning what we do, it will underpin what we do. If you wanted to put the word green to the start of the sentence in relation to everything else we're doing, we can do, but the bottom line is it does have to underpin what we do as a council. In terms of the housing issue, again, I don't understand the bit about going to Jeremy Corbyn because he wasn't in power, he wasn't Prime Minister. It's only relevant going to Prime Ministers. What did we get out of the Labour government previously? Well, we could go on for a long time about the various improvements of the last Labour government. All I would say, Councillor Boardman, is yes, I think we're all on the same page about the housing numbers. I think we all think we're having to build too many. We know that we have tried to defend, and I would put it to anyone that you can't deny we have tried to defend decisions such as Pear Tree Lane, but Pear Tree Lane's not the only one. We've had others going years before that. I've had ones in my ward in Adlington. We've all had developments where we have objected, we have opposed, and it's been overturned on appeal. Those appeals, those decisions then set the policies moving forward. You can't get round that. We've had a decision overturned on appeal at Pear Tree Lane. That now sets this standard that the government and the government inspector are going to work to in the future. We have to get that changed, and all I'd say is please support us on that. But just make one last point, Mr. Mayor, in terms of party politics about all the houses we built, it wasn't this Labour council which lifted the moratorium, Councillor Bournemouth. It was a Conservative council.
Right. Okay. And I now have Councillor Alan Whitaker that wishes to speak.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I wasn't going to speak about this, but I can't just sit back quietly and listen to Councillor Boardman making all these petty party political points. We're talking about if his government minister, Gendrick, has his way, they will just get permission to build on certain sites, and the local authority and local residents won't have an opportunity at all to influence what goes on and where they go and whether they're low cost, whether they're bungalows or anything like that. So maybe they should make some representations to the central government. As regards schools, Graham Dunn has answered a lot of the issues that I was going to do. I personally, because the secondary schools in Chorley are all academies, directly funded by central government. I've been trying to get Croston Bishop Rollstone School, for one, to increase their intake. All I get back from them is, sorry, we can't afford it. The government won't give us enough money. So take that up with them. The third thing, which really prompted me to respond, is when Councillor Boardman starts talking about all the money that's been made available to businesses for in the various things, which I acknowledge there has, he doesn't mention at all the fact that the number of people unemployed in the country is going through the roof. People aren't able to get the resources, the benefits that are having to wait, you know, what is it called, national benefit or whatever else. It's just hypocritical. I'm just amazed. I wasn't going to say anything, Chairman, but I was provoked. Apologies.
Right. Thank you for the restraint, Councillor Whitaker. Right. Is it? Do we have? Sorry. Councillor Platt. Councillor Platt, you wish to speak?
Oh, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just following on, in the strategy, I noticed in your section called Clean, Safe and Healthy Communities, I welcome the fact that you're implementing the homeless and rough sleeping strategy. I wonder whether that was put in before the news of the new government money, which is the £222,500 coming directly to Chorley for permanent places to live for rough sleepers, or whether it does include that, because obviously that's quite a new item. And also I'd like to also commend the officers for getting all these government and taxpayers grants back out to residents, businesses, people who can apply to them. They were extremely quick setting up the system and extremely quick getting the money out. And sometimes, like the other councillors have said, they got the money out before we even got the money in. So thanks for that. And just to ask about that homeless and rough sleeping strategy. Sorry, I can't get my teeth around that one. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to, first of all, Councillor Platt, thank you for your comments. Yeah, I think everyone agrees about that, about the speed at which we responded. In terms of the the rough sleeping strategy and homelessness. Obviously, that's part of that an updated action plan. So the work that's in there was already being developed and already being thought through and already being planned. Obviously, the additional, funds that come from government to do that assist greatly. There's no question. But like everything, it's never enough. You always want more, and we can always do more if you have more. So it's to answer your question: was it already there, and were we doing that scheme anyway? Yes, we were.
Mr. Mayor's
On the normal
muted.
Mr. Mayor's not muted anymore, though. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
It shows we're all fallible, aren't we, in the end? Right. Normally, one would simply go to a vote on this, but if I were to do that, and it were to be passed, there would be no opportunity to deliberate or no purpose in deliberating the alternative corporate strategy put by the Conservative group. So what I intend to do now is ask Councillor Walker to speak to their alternative corporate strategy. But before I do that, I'd just like some clarification from him, because underneath the title it says to receive and consider a report by the Conservative group. This item is for noting. Does that suggest that you don't wish to have a vote on this, or perhaps I've misread that? What's your view on that, Councillor Walker? Now you're muted. Now you're muted.
I was surprised when it was when I read the agenda papers that it was down for noting. I'm quite happy to have a vote on it. I know very well it will be defeated, so it's either or. Doesn't really matter.
No, you're not passing the buck to me like that, Councillor Walker. You decide.
I'm quite happy to. I'm quite happy for the council to vote on the alternative strategy.
Right. Okay. Thank you. With that clarification, please go ahead and sell it to us.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Firstly, can I thank the officers involved with the production of our corporate strategy? It is very much appreciated. Mr. Mayor, over the last 12 months, the council has changed dramatically as a result of the COVID-19. This will continue to have an impact on our residents and the support they have and the support that they have and will receive from the council. We will continue to review our activities and work together with our partners to ensure the council is meeting the needs of the communities across the borough. I make no apologies for bringing last year's excellent Conservative corporate strategy presented by Councillor Boardman back to this council, refreshed with a strategy that will see the council bring a new vision to the residents surely around our 5 themes: the environment and green agenda, economy and education, community safety, housing and health. I presume councillors will have managed to read our strategy, and I do not propose to cover all the themes. I was going to talk about housing, but I think we've discussed that in fair good detail previously. So I'll move on from housing. Although in the housing strategy, I do support the new house building company to build houses that focuses on the right homes for the right people across the borough. And hopefully, when we do come to meet that, all that company meets, they will think about affordable houses and also bungalows and first-time buyers' houses. Community safety is a concern for all residents, no matter where they live, and we are fortunate to live in one of the safest areas in Lancashire. And I'm delighted that Lancashire Police have recruited over 100 new officers this year, and I'm certain this will help with the policing of all crime in Chorley over the coming months. We will continue to deliver first-class healthcare and prevention in our borough and work with our partners in the NHS to retain a first-class hospital facility. And we are delighted to see the opening of our A&E, along with 2 new doctors' surgeries currently being built. And we will endeavour to distribute community infrastructure funding fairly and equally to improve health services across all areas of the borough. Finally, for us to achieve this improvement, we have to set out in our 5 themes the need to look at long-term solutions with our residents. We will continue to support the shared services with South Ribble Council working to a solution for a combined authority and working with the neighbouring partners to provide a better service to our customers, residents and businesses to achieve finance self-sufficiency. We aim to provide high quality services at a price residents can afford, enhancing well-being throughout the borough to ensure that they can enjoy living and working and playing in Chorley. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Right, who wishes to respond? All right, who's seconding this?
Me, Mr. Mayor.
All right, so we've got a seconder from Councillor Platt. Do you wish to speak to it as well?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, getting ahead of myself there.
You're cutting me out.
Would I dare? Wouldn't dare.
I have pleasure in seconding this strategy, and I also agree with a lot of all of John's comments about the officers putting in the work to help us with our strategy. It was nice to have to take a couple of lines out of our strategies this year to see that they'd been adopted by Labour in their strategy. So that was nice. That saved a bit of ink. So I'd like to second this strategy and put it to discussion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Now I'll get back to where I should have been. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to reply to Councillor Platt, always glad to take good ideas and incorporate them. Never a problem, doesn't matter where they've come from. Which is probably why we've not adopted the rest of it. Joking apart. What I'd just like to, one thing I'd like to raise, which I did raise at last year's meeting, and if we could just turn Councillor Walker's attention to page 50 and the fourth paragraph of his alternative strategy, which says that in recent years we've seen our council invest millions of pounds in large and expensive projects such as Market Walk extension, multi-storey car parking, Strawberry Fields digital office park, youth zone, Primrose Gardens, which have all been based in the town centre. And then the next sentence, Mr. Mayor, is one that intrigues me, which leads to, well, I will answer the question which is posed, which is we are told that the current Labour administration will continue to so-called invest in the acquisition of large commercial premises such as warehousing, sheds and occupied retail and commercial buildings. These are again based in and around the town centre, and to what end? Well, before asking the question I wish to ask Mr. Mayor, I'll answer that question to what end. To what end is that since we purchased Market Walk, we've made a profit of £5.2 million. Since we purchased TVS, we've had an income of nearly £500,000. So that's the end, because that means we don't put up council tax. That means we can invest in services in the local community. So my question to Councillor Walker is, if you weren't supporting that, and if you don't support that, where would you get the money from?
Well, all these things are we've got to say, is this a thing? Are these questions suitable for, or purchases suitable for the residents of Chorley? Are the residents of Chorley delighted that we bought the shed on Buckshaw Village? I bet half of them don't know that we bought a shed on that, but they'd be appalled if they knew we spent £30 million.
Councillor, sorry, Mr. Mayor, can I?
Yeah,
because that was
Councillor
the first
Wilson.
question. Sorry, just I will let the leader come in, of course. But I was just going to say, I think appalled that we purchased it for £30 million, it's making a profit, and the fact that we made a profit of nearly £500,000 means that the residents of this borough had the council tax frozen last year. I don't think they'll be annoyed at that or frustrated at that. I think they'll be delighted at that. And I think they'll be delighted in the future when we don't ask for the extra burden placed upon the taxpayer of this borough and we make money elsewhere. And I think, Mr. Mayor, if I may just make one general comment before Councillor Bradley does, that's the problem with the Conservatives' alternative strategy, as it is with their alternative budgets. Fundamentally, there's no great overarching theme. There is no strategy. There is no strategy to raise money. There's no strategy to deal with the loss of money from central government. There's no vision in order to actually make sure that we can continue to invest in the area. And there's just no big picture. And for that reason, Mr. Mayor, we won't be supporting the alternative strategy.
Okay, Councillor Bradley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, just to echo the comments that Councillor Wilson just made regarding the money coming in. That is exactly what some of the decisions have been made to do. Some of the decisions we've made about investments have been to do several things, whether that's supply care facilities for older people, a surgery in Whittle, whatever it might be, there's a number of different drivers, but the fundamental driver is everything should contribute in some way to the betterment of our communities. And some of those premises have contributed significant amounts of money and will continue to do so for years to come. So much so, Councillor Walker, that the first question on every council leader's lips when we meet, usually on Zoom calls or Teams calls these days, is how much is COVID costing you and your council? How much has COVID cost you so far? And the real answer is, in most cases, millions of pounds. Even after the government have given us money, Councillor Boardman, millions of pounds. So, and some councils are going to go over the edge. We're already seeing reports of some councils effectively unable to balance their budget for next year. We've seen the government have to step in and say that it won't allow councils to go bust, because some councils are on the verge of going bust. Surely he's not. Surely he's not, because of the developments and the investments that we've put in place. And I think that needs to be remembered as one of the things. We have had money from New Homes Bonus, as we've accepted, because of the house building. But what we've not done is spent it on day-to-day revenue, or if you like, revenue budget. We've put it into capital projects that will give a return to Chorley, whether that's in cash or in kind, for years to come. And there's another one to be discussed later on in this report in the agenda, which again will give back to the community of Chorley for years to come. Just getting back to the main item of the Conservative and the opposition strategy, as Councillor Wilson said, there are bits in there you can't take exception to. Some of it is very inoffensive, some of it is very predictable, but also a bit like the Cabinet at the moment, some of it is rather muddled and some of it is frankly bizarre, Mr Mayor. Why we would look to provide student accommodation in Chorley, which is one of the few towns in Lancashire that doesn't have a university campus or any sizable student population, does not really make sense to me. We'd far rather put that money and that effort into providing accommodation for our young people who are here, are probably working, perhaps on benefits, or perhaps in a different kind of education, i.e. vocational or sixth form education, as opposed to university students who aren't in our town. I do respect the fact that the opposition have learned some lessons from previous reports that they submitted, and this one is more coherent than many, but it is still muddled, it's still uninspiring, and therefore it doesn't deliver for the wider Chorley, and it needs to become a proper strategy if it's going to be at all adopted by ourselves. And therefore, Mr Mayor, I can't support this document, and I would refer back to the main strategy that we put forward earlier this evening. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Right, now I still have Councillor Martin Boardman's hand up. Is that up for a reason, or no? Oh, that's gone down now. Now I do have another councillor's hand up, Councillor T, and that's all it says on my screen. And all I can see is your ceiling rather than your stairs, rather than you. Councillor Terry Brown, I've been advised it is. Terry, do you want to come in? Councillor Terry Brown. Terry, are you on mute?
Hello, Steve. No, it weren't me. Mine's been on mute all the time.
All right, but your hand was up. Your hand's been up all the time, obviously. Do you wish to speak on this item or not? No?
No, Steve.
No, okay, thanks very much. Right, and I don't think there's... Councillor Graham Dunn. I see your hand. It's a real one.
I've got the other one up as well. Just a short comment. Councillor Boardman rightly praised the, I believe, in total cost that everything's been spent in COVID, the £600 billion the government has spent keeping the country afloat, which is not involved in buying any realisable assets, and which will have to be paid back over 40 or 50 years by my children and my grandchildren and everybody here who's got them. But the Conservatives' document criticises this council on spending 60 million on assets that are realisable and can be used against the debts which have been incurred. I wondered if Councillor Boardman would like to explain why he thinks it's a bad thing to buy assets and run up a debt where the assets can be realised if the debt needs to be paid off. But it's a good thing just to borrow hundreds of billions of pounds and leave future generations to pay it back. It doesn't make any sense to me, I have to say.
Councillor Dunn, I'm going to hopefully take that as a rhetorical question. Is it a rhetorical question, or do you, Councillor Bournemouth wants to come back and respond?
I'm sure he wants to say something. I can't believe he will restrain himself.
Oh, never mind. Okay, Councillor Bournemouth, away you go.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I couldn't possibly refrain myself when Councillor Dunn speaks. You probably know that already.
Yeah, yeah.
I think, as you realise, Councillor Dunn, it's not just your children and grandchildren, it's mine as well that we're paying this back. But where would this economy be without that kind of money coming into the small businesses, the middle-sized businesses, and the residents of this country? A disaster. It would be in a significantly worse place than it is now.
I haven't criticised it at all, Councillor.
Just to come back on,
Councillor Dunn, you need to come through the chairman. I'm sorry.
On your main comment was why isn't this government bought assets? The reason that this council is buying assets is a quick fix for me at the minute. They're borrowing money off central government in order to buy these assets in order to make a return. In principle, that is the theory. What we're not looking at is the greater risk associated with that. Now, COVID has brought the biggest risk that we've ever seen. And, I'd just like to, if Councillor Dunn can come back to me and tell me if he knows how much money Strawberry Fields has made over the past 12 months. I'm not going to get into that. So that is a rhetorical question, Mr. Mayor.
Good.
I don't require an answer to that. But I think we have to be mindful as this council is the amount of assets that we buy increases our risk. And the risk is the bit that I personally and our group have a major issue with. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. With that, hopefully, Councillor Beaver. All right, here we go. Aaron.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I'd just like to. Councillor Wilson already mentioned it about the paragraph that in recent years what we bought. Well, I can see what we bought and why we bought it and why it's where it is. Because the Market Walk extension is for the markets, for the shopping. The multi-storey car park is to enable people to use it. And I remember when we were talking about building the extension, was that they were complaining about there wasn't enough car parking. So I don't know which way they're going on that. Strawberry Fields, it's there because it's got good links. The warehousing has got good links. And I was just looking through a few old papers the other day, 20th of October, that Cheeky Monkeys is closing because they're selling it for housing. And on the 27th of October, that there's plans to loss of 9 jobs for 2 industrial units that are coming down and to be replaced by industrial units again. So the units being knocked down to replace industrial units. When that comes forward, people are going to be complaining that there's no need for it and that there's a big problem with the traffic. Now, they're complaining that we're not doing it, and then when it is going to come forward, just you wait until the planning and see what complaints come through. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Walker, I'm going to take you the opportunity to round up on your proposal, and then we are going to go to a vote.
I'm not going to round up. I'm just going to comment on Councillor Beaver's mention about Cheeky Monkeys. Cheeky Monkeys was renting those premises from Primrose Holdings.
I think we're getting into detail here that we're really
No, I'm just going to say Primrose Holdings aren't going to build some more industrial units. They are going to build some very, very expensive houses on there.
Are they? If they get planning permission. Okay, thank you.
I think they've got plenty of permission.
Oh dear me. Right, well, where we go. I'll say no more. Right, we're going to go to a vote now. Sorry. Okay, I'll try that again. I wasn't muted, it's just my mic was up in the air. Right, so the proposal is that we go to a vote, and in order to create some expediency, my proposal is that we first of all vote on the Conservative group's proposal, which was to be noted but is now to be voted on, And what I will do is take all those in favour, and then anyone else who doesn't vote in favour, I will take as having voted against. If we can do that. Do you want to use your raise hand function in order to indicate that you are in favour of the Conservative group's alternative recommendation? All those in favour, please use your... Right. Has everybody in the Conservative group or elsewhere voted in favour of this particular motion?
I need you to go.
Tony's got his hand up.
Oh, I'll take it off.
Councillor Tony G, are you sure that's how you want to vote?
I took it off.
You've changed it. Right, okay.
Can't take it off now.
Made the mistake.
There's no going back. Right. I am informed that we have 6 people in favour of the alternative corporate strategy. Are we going to ask for those who are opposed to it? Yes.
Of course we are.
Okay. Those who are opposed to the alternative corporate strategy, please. This is new territory for me, so forgive me if I'm struggling a little bit, but we'll get there. Right. All those...
Oh, the votes are flooding in.
Against. Councillor Ridden, are you voting for the
Keith,
Labour?
get your hand down.
He can't change his mind. You said Tony could.
Well,
Come on, Keith.
I'm very
take it
sorry,
down.
Mr. Merritt. Just say that I've lowered my hand, but obviously we're not going to win a lot. We used to be the Magnificent Seven, now the Magnificent Six. We do give every
The sad
opportunity to
six.
win something. No, I didn't say
Well,
sad.
I've
I said
neutralised it.
That's not right.
This is better than
Take your hand down,
television,
Keith.
isn't it, really?
So I've lowered
Okay.
my hand. I'm very sorry. I did raise
It's
it.
still up on the screen, Keith.
Pardon?
Still up on the screen, Keith.
Well, it says lowered here.
Are we where we
that?
need to be? Right.
That's it.
That one won't make much difference, will it?
It is.
Quite
It
right,
is.
Judy,
I
don't
am
make
informed
any
it is significantly lost. So, on that basis, we will move back to the vote on the Labour Group proposal, which is item 5. All those against that.
In favour.
All right. No, we'll go for all those in favour. There was a strategy to go for the ones that are likely to lose, but we've changed our mind on that. Right. We've all got hands, so we can put that up. All those in favour of item 5. Have we got a number on that, Ruth?
33.
33. Okay. Right.
It tells you on screen.
Okay. It does. 33. Right. Okay. Those against, please show.
34, actually, Mr. Mayor. It's 34.
Right.
Well, one came in late.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad Councillor Trump. I'm glad President Trump has the straight up.
I've not got the hair for it.
Right. Please lower your hands now if you've finished on that particular. Right. Those against the item 5. Right. Councillor Ridden +4, so that's 5.
John.
Am I still voting? That's not good.
Yeah, you're voting.
Right. Okay. Right. As is Councillor Walmsley.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
Mr. Mayor, if I may suggest, this is supposed to be speeding it up, but it's slowing it down.
Yeah, I know, but we've got to do it because it's a significant policy thing.
In my view, it's better to go through everybody's name and say for or against, and then we.
Well, we're learning, so perhaps we'll do that in futures. Right. So we've got 7 people voted against, and everyone else has voted for it. So that is passed and agreed. Moving swiftly on. thank you all for your tolerance and forbearance with that. Item 7 is to be the mayoral year 2021-22. It is something that is to be introduced by me, but I will not be partaking in this debate, simply running it for obvious reasons of pecuniary and non-pecuniary interests. So who wants to introduce this? Councillor Bradley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Members have had the papers, which obviously suggest that in light of, as we've highlighted before, the COVID situation, the mayoral year has been affected. The mayor was put in place in May, just at the back end of the last lockdown. Things were getting better through the summer. I think Mr. Mayor and Deputy Mayor, you were doing more of your normal duties, although it was still severely restricted. But then once we've gone back in the autumn into a worsening of the COVID situation, it's become quite apparent that the mayoral duties cannot be discharged fully. So therefore, this report effectively suggests that in light of that experience, that the current mayor, Councillor Holgate's mayoral year is delayed now. He's no longer the mayor apart from to chair meetings for the rest of this year, that he then has the mayoralty for next year, when we'll hopefully we'll be back to normal. All fingers crossed, and that the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Julia Berry, be appointed to the Deputy Mayor for next year, and then obviously in due course beyond that. I don't think there's any real options. Other councils have done similar items. Some councils didn't appoint a mayor. We took the decision based on the members involved, particularly having a view that they thought they could do the role, but events have transpired against us. Nobody's fault. We are where we are. And therefore, the recommendations are just that in paragraphs 2 and 3. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Peter Wilson.
Yeah, happy to second, Mr. Mayor. Just to congratulate you on your efforts so far. Again, I think you were fighting an uphill battle in terms of being able to perform your duties and raise funds and support charities. But we look forward to things being improved next year, Mr. Mayor, and I presume after that ringing endorsement that I gave you earlier this year in nominating you, that I'll be happy to do so again in May. But I'll have plenty more stories to tell.
Oh, right. I said I wouldn't get involved. Okay. Is there anyone else wishing to speak on this item?
Hands up.
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Is that, sorry?
Yes,
Councillor
yes, Mr. Mayor.
Dalton. John.
Councillor Dalton. Congratulations, Mr. Mayor, Councillor Steve Holgate. You deserve to get a second run at the job. You haven't had the chance to do all the fundraising that you wish to do, and I hope you have a second successive year, which is very unusual to see your name on the board twice. Well done. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Councillor Walker. John.
No. Councillor Dalton said exactly what I won't say exactly what I was going to say, but our group does support nomination for next year, and it's a great shame this year that you haven't been able to perform any functions. It must be very frustrating for you, and hope now you can think that next year you can start again and have a successful year.
Thank you very much indeed. Anybody else? No. Okay. So we'll put that to a vote. Could you indicate by raising your hand if you? Yes. All right. Does anybody oppose it? Everybody's voted for it now. Okay. Thank you. We'll take that as being approved. Item 8 is modern slavery update, pages 67 to 70 on your agenda papers, and this is to be for noting, but it's to be introduced by Councillor Peter Wilson.
Thanks, Steve. Sorry, Councillor Holgate.
That's all right. Ooh, touche.
I'm delighted to actually introduce this report, Councillor Holgate, or Chair, I should say. We did, in November 2018, pass a notice of motion at full council when we had a mayor to say that we wanted to support the Cooperative Party Charter against modern slavery. And I think, on a serious note, Chair, that the issue of slavery is as relevant now as it has ever been, although we've seen a lot about, obviously, the disgraceful history of involving slavery, but modern day slavery is in many ways as big a problem, and it's important that we do everything we can as communities and as a council to make sure that we stop it where we can, or that we shout out and speak against it. So I won't go through all the proposals that were included in that notice of motion. They are there for members to see in paragraph 4. But the fundamental of it is to make sure that we use our procurement processes to protect against modern day slavery in areas such as waste, in areas such as leisure, where we do issue contracts at a lot of low paid jobs. And unfortunately, instances of slavery do occur, and therefore it's key that we drill down on that when awarding contracts. And it's also key that we instruct and teach staff and others how to report any issues or any concerns. First of all, spot the signs, and secondly, make sure that those are raised with the relevant authorities. So I'm pleased that we have actually taken action, as it says in the report there on paragraphs 7 through to 11, to actually ensure that our staff are trained accordingly, and ensure that our procurement process covers the issues of tackling slavery and making sure that we deal with it if and when any of those instances arise. And that will continue as far as the council's concerned. So I'm delighted to propose the report.
Okay, Councillor Bradley.
Happy to second that, Mr. Mayor.
Right, is there anyone wish to speak on this report? Nobody. So it's for noting, I believe. Therefore, no need for a vote. I presume we're all noting that report. Next item is item 9, which is committee appointments. Councillor Bradley.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. There are a number of committee changes. They're documented in the agenda. Just briefly, Councillor Gillian Sharples to join Overview and Scrutiny Committee, Councillor John Walker to replace Councillor Boardman on Shared Services, Councillor Alistair Morwood to go on the LCC Health Scrutiny, our Health Hard Care Task and Finish Group. We're going to look to merge the various working groups for the Digital Office Park, Market Walk, Primrose Gardens, etc. into the wholly owned company and the projects working group. The membership there is defined as myself, Councillors Gabbett, G, Danny G, Yvonne Hargreaves, June Molyneux, and reserves from our group of Tommy Gray and Peter Wilson, and from the Conservative group, John Walker, Deborah Platt, with reserves of Martin Boardman and a further councillor to be confirmed. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Right. Okay.
Mr. Mayor, can I confirm the second reserve on the whatever new group, the wholly owned company group, will be Councillor Corns?
Right. Okay. Councillor Corns. Right. Is that accepted? Councillor Wilson, are you
I'll
seconding
second that. Yeah, second that, Chair.
Right. I'd like to thank Councillor Wilson for reminding me constantly of my declining status, by the way. So there we go. Right. So is there anyone?
It's a pleasure.
I know it is. Is there anyone opposed to these appointments? No. Okay. Thank you. Item 10 is the exclusion of press and public. Could we please ensure that the press and public have left the building or are no longer attached?
Mr. Mayor, can I propose the exclusion of the public and press as per the agenda?
Sorry, I did this last time, didn't I? Yeah.
Seconded.
Okay. Right. Okay. Right.
It's a blind spot, Mr. Mayor.
I know. Everybody's got one. Right.